Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate everybody for stopping by. I did go back. They are currently playing round 7. You know, the games have not completed as of yet. Well, some of them have, but not the one that I'm looking for. So I went ahead and went back and picked the last game from the Blitz section. So I do have Wesley versus Viswanathan Anand. And of course, for all my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay. Kumusta na aking makaibigan? Masaya Komu Kitty Kang Muli. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Nice to see you again. Anybody who is coming from India, I will say Vanakam and Nandri for coming by and taking a look at my video. I appreciate it very much. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we start off with e4. We got e5. Knight comes to f3. Knight to c6. Bishop to c4. Bishop to c5. c3. Knight to f6. d3. So we do have the Giuoco piano. Giuoco Pianissimo. So very quiet game, but as you guys know, these positions and games are rarely quiet. It is more of a closed structure, so usually there's a lot of maneuvering and like positional type play. So we do see castles by black. We see bishop to g5, and then Anand decides to defend that with bishop back to e7. Fear not, because, I mean, there are other options that you have in this position. You know, you could just simply go d6, and then after you would see castles, you have a5. Bishop goes down to h4, you can see h6. Knight b to d2, king to h7, a3, g5, and then bishop to g3. And, I mean, you're not really in any danger. So just because you didn't, like break that pin doesn't mean that you're in a bad situation. Now, the thing you do have to be paying attention to, though, if a knight is on c3 or even e3, which that's a lot rarer, and this pin, you have, let me shut that off. Sorry, hold on. Get that turned off. Can I turn that off? Let me just get out of that. Yeah, I apologize, guys. I had one of the games playing in the background, so it was making noise, so I went ahead and shut that off. Okay, if you have the bishop on g5 here, and the knight is pinned to the queen, if the knight has the ability to jump into d5, and especially if the queen can come into f3, then you are going to have a lot of pressure on this pin. So you do have to make sure that you're taking care of that, but this is not that situation. The knight does not have the ability to jump in and just maximize the pins. So you are good to go if you do choose to play this way. But like I said, we see bishop back to e7. We see knight b to d2. We got d6, a4, h6, bishop to h4, knight goes to h5. So you're kind of at a critical point. It's probably a little bit better to go ahead and capture on e7 and then allow the queen to just capture back. But I mean, you definitely have the ability to go back to g3 as well. You're not really worried about knight taking. You're just going to take with the h-pawn. And I mean, neither black or white really got anything. So it's not like something crazy. But we do see g6. We got b4. Wesley is just saying, bro, I want to just like steamroll you like all day over here. You're probably hoping to get b5 in, to knock this knight somewhere. And as you can see, the knight doesn't really have a lot of places to go. Of course, if you go that, it's going to be that, but you could just drop back. And the knight is just a little bit weirdly placed on a5. But we do see bishop to f6. We see castles, and then queen does come to e7, and this is the novelty of the game. Very natural developing move, though. You're just trying to get the queen off the back rank, get this bishop developed somewhere, and then you have your rooks connected, and you are a-okay. That is exactly what you want to do. Get your rooks connected when you are playing your opening, and then you're all set to go. So we do see rook to e1, knight back to d8. We see d4. So you guys can see what I mean about like the maneuvering and stuff like that. This knight went from c6 back here. This knight is just a little bit weird, but I mean, like I said, we're most likely going to trade it for this bishop. So it doesn't really matter that it's on the side of the board. So we do see knight takes g3, pawn takes g3, and then we do see bishop to g4. And Wesley literally says, hey, man, I'm going to copy you from earlier. So we do see bishop to e2. Bishop takes f3, knight takes f3. You really need to take with the knight here in this position because pawn takes, bishop takes is on the board. So you have to make sure you defend against that. And then we do see knight down to e6. We see b5, c6, and then the rook tries to activate itself on b1. They're like, hey, man, you take here, I take here, and I'm looking at your juicy pawn on b7. It's looking kind of tasty, and I'm hungry, son. So we do see pawn taking b5, a rook taking b5, a rook a to c8. But the only problem is, Anand says that your pawn is tasty too. So he's thinking nom noms too. So, you know, nom nom, nom nom. So, you know, it's an even trade. So you kind of have to do something about your pawn. So the queen does take d2. We see queen goes to d2. I don't know why I said queen takes d2. Anyway, queen goes to d2. We see knight to g5. Knight takes g5. Bishop takes g5. Does kind of misplace the queen just a little bit, but we have the ability to come up to d3 and we're good. The rook comes down to c7. We see a5. Rook f comes to c8. And then we do kind of have to do something about that pawn. Because like I said, black, you know, Anand is hungry. He's like, man, I didn't eat lunch. I'm trying to get this pawn. I'm hungry. So Wesley So is saying, hey, so what? Starve. So we do see h5. We see rook e to b1. Pawn takes d4. Pawn takes d4. Rook goes to c1 with check. And you definitely have some options in this particular position. Now, it was kind of funny because the commentators like had this whole line worked out of like, if the king goes here, you got h4. And then if you capture, bishop goes here. And then you got g3. And then queen goes here. And then that is lights out. And you are just going to go ahead and sign the sheets and go home and cry. But anyways, we did not see that. That was a dream case scenario for Anand. We did see bishop back to f1, just covering that check. The rook takes on b1, queen takes b1, and then we have a really explosive rook down to c1. Now, it's not really explosive, but I mean, it does attack this queen. It is a nice square to go to. You know, you're just pinning this piece to the king. So we do see queen up to, oops, got something in my way. We do see queen up to d3. Queen goes over to c7. We see f4. Bishop goes to f4. And Wesley So was like, man, I'm gonna keep attacking you, son. So we got e5. Pawn takes e5. Pawn takes e5. And so this bishop is constantly being displaced. So we do see bishop back to e7. Now we see king to h2. And it is different because this diagonal is a little bit more kind of plugged up. So h4 doesn't really have the same sting as it did before. So we do see king down to g7. We see queen over to f3. And we have reached a point in the game that if you do want to pause the video, Anand actually has a really nice move in this position. And you pretty much have to like disregard all the fire that could happen as white, you know. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and see what black can play here, go ahead and do so. Okay, so a lot of you guys, I think pretty much everybody noticed that this rook is, you know, kind of, you know, this rook and queen are kind of combining to, you know, place this rook beautifully on the 7th rank, right? But you also probably noticed that this pawn is completely undefended and it looks capturable. Well, it completely is. The thing that you have to notice is if you grab white's A pawn and white grabs your B pawn, you actually give yourself an outside pass pawn. And this is exactly what it looks like. Queen taking a5. So this was absolutely the move that you should play in this position. Queen takes a5, queen takes b7, bishop comes down to c5. But like I said, you have given yourself a completely outside pass pawn. And the good thing about the situation is because white has this damaged type of pawn structure, it's not really going to do anything against these 3 pawns, especially this king being, you know, kind of in the vicinity. So this can actually come into play very good for you later on. You know, you probably see rook down to b1 because black is definitely talking about infiltrating this position. Queen going down to e1, rook taking, queen taking, and then queen going to f3. And as you can see, not only does black have an outside pass pawn, but they have basically tied white's pieces down to kind of the defense of the king, and also, you know, this king side here. So, I mean, you know, it's not like black is just completely just wiping white off the board, but I mean, they definitely have a much more, you know, crushing position, and they definitely have the initiative for real. And sometimes just having the initiative is enough to kind of push a game into victory. But we did not see that. After we saw queen coming to f3, Anand did say, hey, man, I'm not really comfortable with that pawn getting took. So he did push b6. Pawn takes, and then we do see queen going to d3. We see rook over to e1. We see rook down to b1. Rook takes, queen goes to c7. And then Wesley So does, you know, the super logical thing, just centralizing his queen. We see queen down to f2. Queen goes to e2. Queen takes e2. And it is in this position that the players do agree to a draw. And I mean, you know, the bishop is going to take here. You know, pretty much there's opposite color bishops. And you have most of the pawns on one side. And this pawn really isn't pushing anywhere because anytime it's going to touch a light square, any of these squares, this bishop is just pretty much going to snap it off. The king is going to redirect itself and get into like just a better position. So, I mean, you know, you can even push pawn here. And I mean, there just really isn't a whole lot that you can really play for in this position. So, as you guys know, opposite color bishops are normally pretty drawn. But that is that game. So, like I said, that was round 2. And I will be jumping off immediately and getting onto this game because the Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Wesley So game is highly interesting. So, maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Makito tayo mamaya. Nandri. And I'll see everybody next time.